Hello everybody, this is Mr. Naversil here. I am going to be showing you the ins and outs of Autodesk Inventor today. We're just going to be going over the basic commands just to get you started. So I have it open here. You can see that it is a completely blank space. I'm going to start off by going over how to start a new file. So you're going to want to come up to the eye in the top left, and we're going to hit New. Now there's going to be a lot of different options as to the part that you want to make. We're always going to stick with standard.ipt. This is just a general part file. You can also make a part file for sheet metal, but we're not working with sheet metal. The assembly drawings, which is when you're putting different parts together. We have drawing files and so on and so forth, but we are always going to be sticking with standard IPT and making sure that it is in fact in the English system. So then you're just going to hit create. It's not going to change much. The background's still going to be pretty much blank, but we have to add some stuff into it. So first thing you're going to do is come up to the top left. You're going to hit Start 2D Sketch. The program's going to pop up with the 3 planes of existence. Normally it wouldn't really matter which one we're picking, but since we're using the 3D printer at the end of this project, we're always going to want to pick the XY plane. This helps the printer recognize where the bed is and where to print off of. So I'm going to click on that, and you can see this grid comes up. Again, pretty blank. We haven't really added anything in yet, but we're getting to it. So one of the first things I'm going to go over is how to do the extrusion cube. So we're going to start by coming up to the rectangle. And whenever you're starting a drawing, you always kind of want to start on the origin. So I'll click once, and I'm not dragging my mouse or anything. The program's waiting for me to click again. You don't have to try and get the right size with the second click, because we're going to go back in and change the measurements. So I'll click again, and I have a rectangle. The cube that I'm making, the extrusion cube, is 2 by 2 by 2. So I'll start off with coming up to the dimension tool, hitting the top. Again, my mouse is not dragging. I just clicked once. It's waiting for me to set where I want this dimension to go. It's always best to put your dimensions outside the object. It's just a little bit less confusing. So you don't want to put it here. You don't want to put the dimension over here. You want to put it outside and then the number in the middle. So I'll click again, and it's going to ask me to input a dimension. In this case, I want to do 2. So I'll hit 2 and then enter. Automatically changes the sketch for us. Now we're not done. We also need to hit the right side here. So I'll click again, and 2. I do not need to go in and do the left and the bottom, seeing as how this is a 90-degree angle between all of these. If this is 2, this has to be 2. If this is 2, this has to be 2. So I'm done with my sketch. I cannot add any depth to this until I do so. You have 2 different options. You can come up and hit Finish Sketch, or you can right-click and hit Finish 2D Sketch. Both do the same exact thing. Now you notice this puts the object kind of in an isometric or a 3D view for us. And now we want to add depth to actually make this a cube. So I'm going to come up to the top left here where it says Extrude. Now you're going to notice the program is automatically selecting the square that we were working with. And that is purely based on the fact that there is nothing else to extrude. So it automatically selects. Now since this is 2 by 2, we want to do a cube. We're going to extrude 2 inches out. And once I hit OK, I'll have my cube. Now we want to do 3 different things to this cube for the project. So on each side we're going to be doing something different. I'm going to go ahead and start with the left side. You can do 2 things. I need to draw on here. You can do Start 2D Sketch and then click on that side, or I can undo that, change my view back to the isometric here, and I can simply right click and hit New Sketch. Again, doing the same exact thing, just two ways to do it. Zoom out a little bit. This side has a cylindrical protrusion, so I'm going to come up to the circle tool, and I'm just going to draw it anywhere in here. Doesn't have to be the right size, doesn't have to be in the right place, because again we're going to be using the dimension tool to set it correctly. Once I'm done with the tool, by the way, it's a lot easier to right click and hit OK. That way you're not selected on anything. You don't mess your drawing up. So I'll come up to dimension. First thing I want to do is hit the outside of the circle and tell the program I want that to have a 1-inch diameter. And you can see that kind of moved out of place, and that's okay. If we right click and hit OK, we're done with our dimension tool. I can simply click the center of this circle and drag it wherever I want. The second part is we have to tell the program we want this exactly in the middle of the cube. So you're going to do that by hitting the center of the circle and the outside and then coming up. Again, this dimension should be outside of the object. it's always best to do that. You don't want to leave it down here. You don't want to have your dimension like this. It's just going to be more confusing. So we'll bring it up. We'll click. It's going to ask us, we want exactly 1 inch. We also want from the center, from the top, to be 1 inch. Now, here's a perfect example. This and this are leader line getting kind of confusing, so bringing it out over this way might be better. And we'll again click and 1 inch. So this is perfectly centered in our cube. It is a 1 inch diameter circle. I am all set. I need to extrude. I cannot do this in sketch mode, so I need to finish. Again, you have 2 different options. I'm going to right click and hit finish 2D sketch. Zoom out and put it in place. We're going to come up to our extrusion tool. Now in this case, you can see that it doesn't automatically select anything because we in fact have 2 profiles. You can click on the outside of the circle or the inside. I'm obviously going to click the inside. Looking at the drawing, that would not be the correct extrusion, so I'm going to go ahead and change this to 0.5, which is ½ inch, and hit OK. So there's one of our 3 features. I'm going to go ahead and do the rectangular protrusion on this side. I'm going to start a new sketch. I'm going to use my rectangle tool, and again, just drawing whatever size box you can in there because we're going to dimension it. Right click, done. So for this one we need a couple more dimensions than the last one. We need to make sure that the sides of the box are in fact 1 by 1, and you don't have to do this the left side and the bottom again because this is a square. I do need to tell the program how far away the square is from the edges though. We want this perfectly centered in the middle. So if I dimension from here to here, bringing this out, clicking, it is in fact a ½ inch away, and then from this side of the box to the outside of our cube is also ½ inch. It would be unnecessary to go in and dimension these because we know that the cube itself is 2 inches, we know that this is ½ inch, and we know that this is 1 inch. There is nothing I could possibly put in between here that's going to change it. It has to be ½ inch. In fact, I'll show you. If I try to dimension from here to here and bring it down, oops, it will click. It'll bug out for a second, it will wait, and then a warning will pop up saying you are trying to over-constrain the sketch. This just means that you literally cannot change that. It is what it is. So if you hit accept, the dimension will pop up, but it will be in parentheses. It's just showing you what it is. There's nothing you can do to change it at this point. So I'm done. I'd like to extrude this again. I'm going to hit finish sketch. Come up to our extrude tool, and once again you have 2 different options. We want to hit inside the square. It's already set at ½ inch for us, which is great, and we're going to click OK. The last feature we need to make on this cube is the circle hole from the top to the bottom. So I'm going to right click here and hit new sketch. This is going to be very similar to the cylindrical protrusion. We're going to make a circle in here, and I'm going to dimension it the same way I did the other one. I'm going to hit 1 inch for the diameter. I know that the center to the side is going to be 1 inch exactly, and the center from the top is going to be 1 inch. Now that it's perfectly put in place, and we know that it's an inch diameter, I'm again done, so I'd like to extrude. I'm going to hit finish sketch. I'll come up to the extrude. We're going to be doing the opposite this time. We're not going to be adding material. We're in fact going to be taking it away. Now there are a couple different ways you can do this. You can use the extrude tool. There's also a specific tool called the hole tool. This gives you kind of a different amount of options into the hole that you want to make. Ours is pretty simplistic, so we're just going to use the extrude tool. I'm going to select that circle. Again, we don't want to add material. We want to in fact choose this option, which is our cut option. And you can see that it is in fact going down inside now, and you can even see the red outline showing how far it's going. Now we want it to go from the top all the way to the bottom, so we have to change the extrusion length, and in this case we know that the cube is 2 inches high, so if I hit 2, hit OK, I can use my free orbit tool over here on the right side and see that the bottom is in fact all the way cut. So that's just the basics, guys. That's just the extrusion cube. This is our first out of 7 projects. Hope it goes well.